Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something you probably do every single week: the 5 mistakes ruining your sandwich. Look, you've been tossing ingredients between 2 slices of bread your entire life, right? But there's a very, very good chance you've been doing it fundamentally wrong this whole time. I've got a bit of a secret to share with you, and honestly, it might just completely shatter your confidence in your everyday lunch routine. So, are you ruining your sandwich? Well, yeah, you likely are. And you've probably been making the exact same 5 foundational errors since you first learned how to use a butter knife. Now, don't worry, we aren't talking about complicated, high-end chef techniques here, and we certainly aren't talking about buying exotic, wildly expensive ingredients. What we are talking about are the invisible decisions. The tiny, almost completely unnoticeable physical choices that separate a sandwich you eat just because you're hungry from a sandwich you literally cannot stop thinking about days later. It all comes down to 3 things: structural integrity, chemistry, and, as we'll see a bit later, even geometry. By the end of this explainer, I promise you, you're going to construct every single sandwich differently, starting with the very next one you make. So let's start right at the foundation. All right, mistake number 1. And this actually happens before a single ingredient even goes inside. Most of us, we just choose our bread based on habit or, let's be real, whatever happens to be sitting in the pantry. But the absolute golden rule of sandwich architecture: you have to match the bread's crumb structure to the moisture and weight of your filling. So, for example, if you're using wet fillings, think juicy tomatoes, cucumbers, tuna salad, or heavily dressed greens, you absolutely must use a dense, tight crumbed bread, something like a good baguette or a sturdy sourdough, just to resist that moisture absorption. Because if you don't, well, put a wet tomato or a saucy meat on soft, yielding sandwich bread, and you instantly trigger a strict destruction timeline. The bread absorbs that moisture in exactly 4 minutes. Just 4 minutes. By the time you actually sit down to unwrap your lunch, you aren't really eating a sandwich anymore. You're eating a soggy, collapsing, wet compress. The structural integrity is totally gone, the texture is completely gone, and the entire experience is basically ruined before you've even taken a single bite. Okay, let's move on to mistake number 2 and see how this disaster kind of builds on itself. This is all about spreading your condiments. Leaving what we call naked edges is a genuine structural catastrophe. Think about it. Most people just slap the knife in the center, spread it around a bit, and leave a good ½ centimeter of bare bread all around the perimeter. Those are your naked edges. And here's why that's so bad. First, without a solid fat layer of butter or mayo reaching the very edge, your moisture barrier fails. The crust just softens right up from the outside in. Second, your first bite is always taken from the edge, right? Meaning your first impression is this flavorless, unseasoned mouthful of dry bread. And third, every single bite after that has a totally different, uneven flavor ratio. The fix here is super simple. Spread your butter and condiments to every single millimeter of that bread. Now, leaving naked edges ruins the texture and the flavor, for sure. But the worst is actually yet to come, right there in the middle of your sandwich. Because while those first 2 mistakes were highly visible physical errors, we're now crossing over into the invisible, the chemical errors. This brings us to mistake number 3, salting at the wrong moment. To really understand this, we have to look at the science of salt. You see, salt isn't just a flavor enhancer, it's hygroscopic. Now, what does that mean? It means it's a chemical trigger that actively draws water out of whatever it touches through osmosis. So when you slice up a beautiful, juicy tomato, slap it on your bread, and sprinkle salt directly on top, you instantly create this terrible tomato sponge effect. And just how fast does that happen? 60 seconds. Within 60 to 90 seconds, that salted tomato begins aggressively releasing its internal moisture. And inside a closed sandwich, that liquid has literally only one place to go: directly into your bread. It rots the foundation from the inside out. By the time you're halfway done eating, your bottom slice is dangerously close to the texture of wet paper. Nobody wants that. So the crucial takeaway here is knowing how to stop this chemical reaction in its tracks. Professional sandwich makers actually rely on 3 strict solutions for this. Solution 1, advanced draining. Just salt your wet veggies about 15 to 20 minutes before you assemble everything, let them drain on a paper towel, and use them dry. Boom, the moisture's gone. Solution 2, table salting. You just assemble the sandwich totally unsalted and then salt each individual bite as you eat it. That way there's zero time for osmosis. Or solution 3, the barrier method. You just place a sacrificial layer of lettuce or a nice thick protein right underneath the wet ingredient that absorbs the moisture long before it ever reaches the bread. Okay, so let's say you've mastered the bread, the spread, and the salt. You might think you're safe, right? Well, mistake number 4 shifts us entirely away from chemistry and directly into structural engineering. Ask any professional chef and they'll tell you, a sandwich is not just some casual stacking exercise. It is a strict, actually kind of counterintuitive blueprint. Look, most people just layer things in whatever order they pull them out of the fridge. Bread, heavy meat, wet tomatoes, whatever, but that literally crushes the bottom slice instantly. Instead, you really need a correct, professional 7-layer architecture. Let's build it from the bottom up. First, your bottom bread, coated edge to edge in butter to create that crucial moisture barrier. Second, sturdy greens. These act as a structural platform right at the base. Third, your wet ingredients, safely resting on top of those waterproof greens. Fourth, the cheese. You put it right in the middle where it's perfectly insulated. Fifth, your heavy protein, pressing down into the soft cheese rather than crushing your bread. Sixth, your sauces and seasonings. And finally, number 7, the top bread. In this exact order, everything is in its absolute optimal position for moisture management and weight distribution. It's brilliant. But here's the crazy part. You can source the perfect tight-crumbed baguette. You can spread your mayo to the absolute edge. You can expertly delay your salting and flawlessly engineer your 7 layers. But every single one of those great decisions can still be completely undermined until the final cut. Which brings us to the climax of our explainer. Mistake number 5. Does the physical shape of your food actually change the way it tastes? Think about it. If you pick up a knife and cut your sandwich straight down the middle to make 2 boring rectangles, you have just made a split-second decision that will measurably degrade the flavor of your meal. I know, it sounds wild, but it really comes down to simple geometry. When you cut a sandwich diagonally, from corner to corner, you naturally expose a much larger cross-sectional surface area along that cut than a straight line ever could. And because of that larger surface area, more of the delicious filling is directly accessible right at the point of your first bite. That higher filling to bread ratio on bite number 1, it literally dictates your brain's entire flavor assessment for the rest of the meal. And hey, this isn't just some snobby aesthetic preference. It is a mind-blowing neuroscience fact. Researchers over at Oxford University's Cross-Modal Research Laboratory have actually studied this exact phenomenon, and they proved it. A diagonally cut sandwich measurably and consistently tastes better to the person eating it, completely regardless of the ingredients inside. The geometry literally tricks the human brain into perceiving a more flavorful, generous meal. How cool is that? But wait, the shape of the cut is only half of this final mistake. The tool you use matters just as much. If you use a straight-edged knife, the downward pressure just completely collapses that beautiful crumb structure you've so painstakingly protected. It compresses all your perfectly engineered layers into a mushy mess. So always use a serrated knife. A serrated blade gently saws right through the tension, maintaining the structural integrity of the bread and keeping all 7 of those layers in their perfect, designated spots. All right, let's bring this all together. These 5 professional fixes really form a singular, totally transformative approach. 1, match your bread density to the filling. 2, spread your fat barrier to every single edge. 3, pre-salt and drain your wet ingredients to stop that osmosis effect. 4, follow the strict engineered layering order. And 5, always finish with a diagonal cut using a serrated knife. Now, you might be wondering, why does this make it taste so much better than usual? Well, if you apply all 5 of these fixes to the exact same ingredients you probably have sitting in your kitchen right now, you aren't just making a slightly better lunch. You are creating a categorically different eating experience. Your sandwich is going to hold together, it's going to taste perfectly even from edge to edge, and it will maintain its ideal texture down to the very last crumb. Best of all, it requires absolute 0 extra cost and takes exactly 60 seconds of focused attention. A soggy, structurally collapsed, uneven meal is what most people just casually accept as normal. But normal was always optional. Now that you know the hidden physical, chemical, and geometric rules of sandwich architecture, you simply can't unsee them. So the only thing left to ask is, what will your next sandwich actually taste like?